Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today, we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 23rd January 2018. Now, let us begin. Now, we have taken this news from page 5. The first thing from this article that we would focus on is the geographical location of the Nagarjuna Sagar Tiger Reserve. After that, we would focus on the All India Tiger Estimation of 2018 and then finally as to what is M stripes. Now let us start with the geographical location. Now the Nagarjuna Sagar Tiger Reserve is located in the state of Andhra Pradesh. And this reserve mainly consists of the Nanamala forest. Now in terms of geographical location, this is all you need to know with regards to your prelims examination. Now let us understand about the All India Tiger Estimation of 2018. Now this is also called the 4th All India Tiger Estimation and has begun from the Nagarjuna Sagar Tiger Reserve. Now, the 4th All India Tiger Estimation Program is being developed and implemented by the Wildlife Institute of India. Now, the All India Tiger Estimation is implemented every 4 years. And this is being done under the direction of the National Tiger Conservation Authority. Now, we would understand more about the NTCA later in this section. Now, the All India Tiger Estimation Program has 3 main aims. The first is to measure the extent and population of the tigers. The second is to measure the habitat status. Now this habitat status includes the prey availability, the pressure of human, among other factors. And the third aim is to measure the future trends. Now these future trends would be in the population of the tigers, the increase or decrease of its area, and other factors. Now the last All India Tiger Estimation was done in 2014 and with the first one in 2006. Now hopefully up till here you have understood about the All India Tiger Estimation of 2018. You also understand that it is beginning from the Nagarjuna Sagar Tiger Reserve. Who is it developed and implemented by? You also understand as to under whose direction it is implemented. What are the 3 aims of the All India Tiger Estimation Program? And when was it last done? Now let us understand about NTCA or the National Tiger Conservation Authority. Now the NTCA is a statutory body and implements Project Tiger. Now this Project Tiger is a central scheme and began in 1973. Now the purpose of this scheme is for in-site conservation of tigers in designated tiger reserves. Now hopefully up till here you have understood as to what is NTCA and what is its main purpose. Now let us understand about the M stripes. Now as some of you may know, there was a question asked in the 2017 UPSC prelims examination about M stripes itself. Now this question was asked in the UPSC 2017 prelims. So let us understand about M stripes. Now initially what you had were field-based practices that formed a protocol. Now these field-based exercises were such as patrolling, ecological monitoring, etc. Now the information collected from this field-based protocol was not available in an easy format and therefore could not be used for data analysis. So therefore a new system called M stripes was developed. Now this customized software can have the field-based data in form of storage, analysis, etc. Now this data would be of ecological data of tigers, prey, habitat, etc. Now this M stripes is a GIS-based tool, wherein GIS means it is a geographical information system, and this customized software also provides easy reports, which means it could be used for big data analysis and can be easily read by scholars, practitioners, and others. So hopefully up till here you have understood as to what is M stripes, what was the earlier problem, and how does M stripes solve it. Now hopefully with this segment you would have a basic understanding of the All India Tiger Estimation, National Tiger Conservation Authority, M stripes, and of Project Tiger. Now with this we move on to our next article. Now we have taken this news from the editorial page. Now let us first understand as to why is it in the news. Now the Committee on Parliament on Official Language in its 2011 report gave a recommendation to make Hindi an official language at the UN. Now recently, the Government of India has started pursuing this, but this initiative is being opposed. Now hopefully up till here you've understood as to why is it in the news, what was the recommendation of the Committee on Parliament on Official Language. Now we would not go into the political background of this news. So what we'll do is understand the specifics such as the 3-language formula from the perspective of your UPSC prelims and mains examination. Now from your prelims perspective, you should know Article 343, which gives the official language of the Union. And in addition, if you were asked in your prelims examination, as languages form a part of which of the following schedule, you would know that languages are a part of the 8th schedule. Now the Article 343 states that Hindi, written in the Devanagari script, is to be the official language of the Union. But there was another provision that for the first 15 years from 1950 to 1965, English language would continue to be used for all the official purposes of the Union. But subsequently, the Parliament enacted the Official Language Act in 1963. Now, as you know, the English language was supposed to be used from 1950 to 1965. Now, the Official Languages Act of 1963 provided that the use of English would continue even after 1965 for an indefinite period, meaning that it was without any time limit. So, under this act, English and Hindi were to be used for all official purposes of the Union and also for the transaction of business in Parliament. Now, moreover, the 1963 Act ensured that English should be used for purposes of communication between the Union and the non-Hindi states. Now, hopefully up till here, you have understood as to what does Article 343 state. You also know which article makes Hindi one of the official languages of India. Similarly, you understand the provision of English in the Constitution and what changes did the Official Language Act of 1963 make with regard to the usage of the English language. Now, hopefully, you have understood up till here so that we may understand the three language formula under the Official Language Resolution of 1968. Now, the Official Language Resolution of 1968 gave the three language formula. Now, it said that in Hindi speaking states, Hindi plus English plus one of the modern Indian languages were to be used in the Hindi speaking states, while in the non Hindi speaking states, Hindi plus English plus the regional language of that state were to be used in the non Hindi speaking states. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've understood what is the importance of the Official Language Resolution Act of 1968 and what is meant by the three language formula. Now, in the article, what the author suggests is that the non Hindi speaking states have made considerable progress in following the three language formula, while the Hindi speaking states have primarily focused on Hindi and have not given much importance in promoting English or any of the modern Indian languages, especially the southern languages. Now, with this, you have understood the brief background of the three language formula. Now, we move on to our next article. Now, the lead editorial, Getting Back on the Democratic Path, is a simple and straightforward editorial. The article talks about the merits of democracy and why successful nations across the world follow democracy as a form of government. And India, like other nations, opted for a democratic form of government where people elect their leaders on the basis of universal adult franchise. Now, despite India's cultural diversity across geographical territory, democracy has binded India in a one thread of nationalism. The article further highlights the problems in the past and how we as a nation have matured over a period of constant evolution. The article also compares India and other countries which got independence around the same time, such as Turkey, Indonesia, and others. Now, India remained on a path of democracy, while these other nations, such as Turkey, Indonesia, Spain, and others, moved through a period of authoritarianism. Now, you should try to understand this article from your own perspective, and therefore, we will not be analyzing it today. So, we move on to our next article. Now, we have taken this news from the editorial page on page 8. Now, to understand this article, we have to first understand the world history of the Kurdish movement with regards to Turkey, Syria, and in the Middle East in general. And then we would understand as to why is it in the news. Now, this world history perspective is important for your UPSC mains examination. And let us first understand as to where it is placed in the UPSC syllabus. Now, world history is a part of your GS paper 1 and it includes the history of the world such as world wars and redrawal of national boundaries. And therefore, the Kurds and the Kurdistan issue is important from this perspective. And now let us understand how. Now, the recent Kurdish referendum, which was held in Iraq, was covered in the November edition of the Focus magazine. So we're using this image from that article itself to get a geographical understanding of the Kurds. Now, the majority of the Kurds population is located in the Middle East and is spread over 4 countries, which are Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. Now, Kurds are the 4th largest ethnic group in the Middle East, which means that they're different from the main ethnic groups that reside in the Middle East, such as Arabs, Turks, and others. Now, the Kurds mainly speak an Indo-European language called Kurdish. Now, this makes them different from the mainly spoken Arab language in the Middle East. Now, Kurds are also mainly Sunni Muslims, which is similar to the main religious affiliation in the Middle East, which is also Sunni Muslim. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've understood the geographical location of Kurds. You've also understood as to why they are different from the main population in the Middle East. Now, Kurds are also one of the largest ethnic group in the world, which do not have a state of their own. Certain ethnic groups, such as the Han Chinese, have a country called China. The Turk ethnic group have Turkey. And in similar terms, the Kurdish ethnic group do not have a country of their own. Now let us understand this through a world history perspective. Now after World War I, the Treaty of Sevres of 1920 dissolved the Ottoman Empire. Now this treaty had a provision for creation of an autonomous Kurdish state. Now this Kurdish state would be created in the former territories of the Ottoman Empire. And which territory would create the Kurdish state would be decided through a referendum. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood the Treaty of Sevres. You also understand that it dissolved the Ottoman Empire and it had a provision to create a Kurdish state. Now, what happened after this? The state of Turkey was formed from the main territories of the Ottoman Empire, and Turkey rejected this Treaty of Sevres. And a new treaty was negotiated called the Treaty of Lausanne. And this new Treaty of Lausanne of 1923 omitted any reference to a new Kurdish state. And because of this new Treaty of Lausanne, Kurds were confined to the new nations formed of Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and others. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood on why the Treaty of Lausanne 1923 is important for Kurdish world history. You also understand as to why the Treaty of Sevres rejected the claim to a new Kurdish state. And finally, you also understand why the Kurds today do not have a state of their own. Now, these Kurds have been fighting for autonomy and independence in Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and other states since the Treaty of Lausanne was signed. Now, if we come back to the UPSC syllabus with regards to world history, now as we have talked about, this Kurdish world history would form a part of the history of the world in your GS paper 1 and covers world wars and redrawal of national boundaries. So, if a question is asked in your mains examination, such as the conflict of the Kurdish population in the Middle East stems from the unfinished promise of the Treaty of Sevres, comment, you would be able to answer with the explanation given in this section. Now, the reason why the article is in the news, because recently, if you look at this image, this area in Syria is controlled mainly by the Syrian Kurds. And as you might remember from a recent video, US had decided to create a border force of Kurdish forces in this area to fight ISIS. Now, within this area, and especially in the city of Raqqa, the Kurdish fighters have been able to defeat ISIS with the help of US, Russia, and others. Now, like their Kurdish counterparts in Iraq, the Syrian Kurds living in this area also want autonomy. Now, this demand for autonomy is highly opposed by Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. And because of this, Turkey has started military skirmishes against the Kurdish forces. And this article gives a reference of a recent skirmish and why is it happening. Now, this news is very specific for international relations from your UPSC examination point of view. But hopefully from this, you've gotten a basic understanding as to what the article talks about. Now we move on to our next article. Now we have taken this news from page 11 and the second news from page 13. Now both these articles talk about the RCEP agreement, and RCEP stands for the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Now let us understand more about this. Now RCEP is an ASEAN-led group, and ASEAN consists of 10 members, which are Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Brunei Darussalam. Now ASEAN has a mechanism called ASEAN Plus One, which consists of the 10 members of ASEAN, and the plus one member is the one FTA partner that ASEAN has. Now these 10 members of ASEAN and the FTA partners formed what is called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. And the 6 FTA partners which are members of the RCEP agreement are India, China, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea. And as you can see from the map, ASEAN members form what is called the Southeast Asian countries, and the 6 FTA partners form what is called the larger Indo-Pacific area. So RCEP, which includes the countries of the Indo-Pacific region. Now hopefully up till here, you have understood who are the 16 members of RCEP. You also understand as to how the ASEAN Plus One format led to the formation of the RCEP agreement. And you also understand as to what region does RCEP cover. Now let us understand as to what does the agreement cover. Now the RCEP agreement intends to be a free trade agreement. And by the term intense, we mean that it is still under negotiation and is currently not an FTA yet. Now, the RCEP agreement intends to cover 8 factors, which are goods, services, investment, competition, intellectual property, economic and technical cooperation, e commerce, and law. Now, do remember these 8 points because this is the first free trade agreement that India might sign which has the concept of e commerce included in it. Now, let us understand a brief factual history of RCEP, which might be asked in your prelims examination in terms of statement. Now, there are 3 important summits which you should remember for your prelims examination. The first is that the ASEAN framework for RCEP was adopted at the 19th ASEAN summit in the year 2011 in Bali. The second important summit is that the joint declaration for launch of RCEP negotiation occurred in the 21st ASEAN summit in the year 2012 in Phnom Penh. Now, this city is in Cambodia. While the most important of these 3 summits is the first RCEP summit meeting, which was held in Manila, Philippines in the year 2017. Now, you have to understand that the first 2 meetings were ASEAN summits, and the third summit was actually the first RCEP summit, which was held after multiple dialogues. And because it is a very recent news, it becomes important for your prelims examination. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood as to at which ASEAN summit was the ASEAN framework for RCEP adopted, at what ASEAN summit RCEP negotiations were launched, and where the first RCEP summit was held. Now, let us understand India's negotiations with other RCEP members. Now, in simple terms, India is currently negotiating for liberalization of the services sector in other members of RCEP. Now, this is because India has a very strong services sector in form of IT-enabled services, banking sector, financial sector, and others, and therefore wants the other members of the RCEP to open their services sector so India may join in. While the other members of RCEP, especially China, want India to liberalize its manufacturing sector, but India is currently reluctant to open it up. Now, India is reluctant to open up its manufacturing sector because China, Vietnam, and other members have a very strong manufacturing sector, and their manufacturing goods might flood India if India opens up its market. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood on how the negotiations between India and other members of RCEP is currently stuck on, and why India wants liberalization of the services sector but is reluctant to liberalize its own manufacturing sector. So, if a question is asked in your prelims examination, such as that which of the following statement is correct about RCEP, you would know that the answer is B. Now, RCEP is also important for your prelims and mains examination because the 10 members of ASEAN are also the invited guests at the Republic Day parade this year. Now, we have taken this news from page 13. Now, let us first understand as to why is it in the news. Now, the non-performing assets in the banking sector are expected to rise to rupees 9.5 lakh crores, while the stressed assets are likely to increase to 11.5 lakh crores. Now, these are expected to rise by March of 2018. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood as to why is it in the news. Now, let me give you a brief understanding of NPA. Now, in the past few years, Indian banking system has experienced the problem of non-performing assets on a large scale. Now, non-performing asset is a loan whose interest or installment of principal have remained overdue or not paid for over a period of 90 days. Now, another factor which this article talks about is stressed assets. Now, stressed asset is NPAs plus restructured loans plus written off assets. Now, restructured loans are those loans which got an extended repayment period and or reduced interest rate, or a part of its loan was converted into equity, it was provided additional financing, or some combination of these 3 measures. Now, the third factor which this article talks about is the asset reconstruction companies. Now, ARCs were introduced with the aim of reconstruction of stressed assets. Now, this reconstruction would be done by specialists in the field and thus would relieve the banks of this task and allow them to focus on their core operations. Now, the fourth and the last factor which this article talks about is about provisioning. Now, commercial banks in India are required to meet the provisioning requirements as per the rules of the RBI. As per the rules of the RBI. Now, provisioning means that the banks have to set aside an amount in order to meet future anticipated losses. Now, this amount is set aside to meet future anticipated losses. Now, since non-performing assets represent losses, Now, banks have to set aside a larger amount to meet the provisioning requirements. And because of this increased provisional requirement, banks have less credit to provide to the economy. And this has an adverse impact on the growth of the Indian economy. So, hopefully, up till here, you have a basic understanding as to what is a non performing asset, what are stressed assets, what do you mean by restructured loans, what are asset reconstruction companies, and what is meant by the term provisioning, and how the rise in NPA losses have increased the provisioning requirement, and moreover, you understand as to how that has led to a decrease in the credit. So, hopefully, with this, you understand the terms that have been given in this article. And if a question is asked in your prelims examination with regards to what is provisioning, what is the purpose of the asset reconstruction companies, what are stressed assets, you would be able to answer. Now, with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's paper. Now, if you want to connect with me and with the other members of the Rouse Focus team, you can join the Rouse Focus group on Facebook, whose link is given in the description below. Now, we move on to the question for today.